Hi, my name is Judy and I'm the City Stitcher, and welcome to my Flosstube channel. This is Flosstube number 5, Let's Talk Stitch Sania Part 2. It is Sunday, May the 17th, 2020, so we are just past the midway point of May. Mania is in full swing, so for those of you that are participating via stitching, I hope your mania is going well and you're accomplishing all that you want to accomplish, starting the starts that you want to start. The version of mania that I'm doing is a version of the Stitch Sania that Lindy Stitches, Stephanie Webb, was talking about on her channel. So what I'm doing is Monday through Friday I am working on a main project, and then every weekend during the month of May I am starting a new project, but the project has to be small, and my definition of small is the project has to be less than 100 by 100 stitches. So what have I accomplished this week? So my main project continues to be Fairy Winter Dream by Nora Corbett. And I was talking to somebody this week and they were like, I'm really surprised, it looks really nice, I haven't seen this pattern before. So this is not a terribly old pattern, so the copyright on this pattern is 2014, so it's not a terribly old pattern, but I do agree, I don't think that there are a lot of people that are stitching this particular pattern. And there are 4 seasons, so this is the winter version. There is a spring, summer, and fall fairy that are also available. So what have I accomplished this week? So what I've accomplished this week is I have completely finished the right hand side of the dress and have moved over onto the left. So I'm doing this on a 28 count Midnight Tryst Jobelin by Hand Dyed Fabrics by Stephanie. And again, the order that I'm stitching this dress: center of the dress, right side of the dress, left side of the dress, followed by the skin, which I will be doing 1/1, followed by the wings, back stitching, and beads. Now, the interesting thing about this particular choice of fabric is that it makes it very obvious as to where the beads need to go. So every single one of these spots that you can see in the dress, and these longer spots, are for beads that I will be attaching at the end. So one of the pros is it does make it a little more obvious whether or not, if I get to the end of those and I can see one of those spots, it means I've missed a bead. There are a few bugles that end up needing to lie on the diagonal, so those don't have quite visible a spot as the other ones, but it does make it pretty apparent where those beads need to go. Given my finance background, I am one of those people where I do keep track of the quantity of beads that I end up putting on a pattern. I don't count it up before I put them on, so at this point I can't tell you how many beads this pattern requires, but I am pretty confident that by the time that I have completed this project, I will be able to tell you with great confidence exactly how many beads need to be stitched onto this project. So once again, this is Fairy Winter Dream by Nora Corbett, stitched on 28 count hand dyed Jobelin in Midnight Tryst by Hand Dyed Fabrics by Stephanie. So that's my Monday through Friday project. Last week you got to see my weekend number 2 project. So this is Music and Books by Little House Needleworks. I'm doing this on a unknown gray fabric. So I think last week when I was talking about this, my whole intention, so I'd done sort of these green parts here, and I was going to aim to complete everything in the top part. And if you can't tell, as soon as I started stitching on Sunday, that entire concept fell away. Apparently I really do have a need to finish all of one color on a pattern. I think particularly when it's this small, that I really struggled, you know, so I sort of came over and started and I finish this instrument. But then of course I had some black threads that were left over in brown, which meant I immediately came down here and worked on the black and brown books. So for whatever reason, apparently I just need to finish off a color. So I feel like I got a lot more accomplished in the book section of this design than I did in the music section, although I did complete this instrument, including the back stitching on that. I'm doing much better this week in terms of being able to sort of just look at this project and go, despite the fact that there's not a lot left to do on it, was totally fine on Monday putting it away and getting back to working on Fairy Winter Dream. So from that perspective, I think this exercise has been interesting for me as a stitcher, saying I think I can see the benefit of having two projects on the go. I'm generally a monogamous stitcher, but I think once we get to the end of May and I've got a couple of, okay, probably by the end of May I'll have 5 unfinished small pieces, some of which will get finished quite rapidly at the beginning of June. But I can see in the course of a regular week, you know, not necessarily in the evenings wanting to, I can see just sort of saying I just want to work on something small, and if you've got something that's started and ready to go, I think that will add to my stitching pleasure. So certainly Stitch Sania is paying off in that perspective and how I view this. So that's where I'm at on Music and Books by Little House Needleworks, which was weekend number 2. Weekend number 3, which is this weekend. So this weekend I started Summer Notes by Shepherd's Bush. So this is a Nashville 2020 release. So it came out in March. So I'm doing this on a 28 count ice blue Lugana. So I don't think in the video you can see the blue. In real life you can see that it is a pale blue. It's not a very strong blue, it is just sort of that hint of blue. And so I've, as I want to do with my projects, I've started in the center, so worked on the trees, worked on the cabin. This is the boat that's sitting in the lake. So this is coming along. I commented last week that as I was kitting this up that I was doing a few things in terms of the chart. So as with most charts, so this particular pattern requires a lot of Weeks Dye Works and Classic Color Works. So it is completely as charted, uses entirely over dyed threads, but they have included a DMC conversion for those. So as I was kitting it up, there were quite a few things that I was looking at the pattern and noting that I'm not sure that there was a lot of benefit to using the variegated threads. So one of the things was these trees here are variegated, so I'm using Classic Colorworks Bayberry. Now, when I was stitching it, I had made the decision that I was going to use the overdyed, but I have to say I really don't think that you can see much variegation in there at all. So that was certainly a color that I went, I'm not sure that there would have been much benefit to using the overdyed fabric. And certainly there are colors like Blacksmith Blue by Classic Colorworks. It is used for a total stitch count of 7 actual full stitches and then a bunch of outlining. So again, that's a color that for me was pretty easy to make the decision to use the DMC equivalent of 3750 for that particular color. So just, you know, everybody gets to make that decision for themselves. If you're a stitcher who goes, I just love using overdyed threads for everything that I can possibly can, whether I see variegation or not, great, there's overdyed threads for you in this particular piece. If you're someone who goes, you know, for whatever reason, I don't like working with them. I don't have the budget for them. On this particular piece, so far, from what I've seen in the way that I kitted this up for myself, as well as what I've stitched, if you had to do the whole thing in the DMC equivalents, I think it would end up still looking very similar to the original pattern. So again, make those decisions for yourself. Just because a pattern calls for the over-dyed, you do get to, you know, as I say, I'm looking at it saying, and so despite the fact that I did use the bayberry, you know, not a lot of variegation. I'm okay that I have the bayberry to put back in my stash, but it was just a little bit of a note to self saying, I felt that with the stitches there that I would be able to see the variegation, and I can't. I'm also not one to fiddle around with where the variegation in a strand occurs. Like the way that it comes off is the way that I use it, and if the variegation isn't there, I'm not gonna fuss around and figure out where to start and stop to put variegation into it. That's just not how I choose to spend my stitching time on that. So my plan, so again, because this is Sunday, I will continue working on this. So what I'm planning on doing is I'm planning on finishing off the cottage here, so put the door in and finish off the windows, work on the boat here in the lake, and hopefully start working on the lake. So the lake is variegated, and I have chosen to use that floss for this. So again, check back next week and we'll see if the variegation comes through or not. So this is Summer Notes by Shepherd's Bush, and I'm doing it on a 28 count ice blue Lugana. So that's weekend number 3. What's in stock for weekend number 4? So for those of you that have been watching every week, you'll know that the first week was Butterfly Square by Elizabeth's Designs, and I chose it particularly because I was feeling the need for something springy, and so it had very spring colors. Then I did something every day for week 2. Week 3 was Summer Notes. So I've decided for week 4 that I'm going to do something for fall. And so this is a Hinzeit pattern called Mini Block Autumn. So that's what that's going to look like. So I'm generally not overly fall color type stitcher, but I do figure that I should have something for each of the seasons, and this is not terribly intrusive. So I'm going to stitch this on a really dramatic piece of ivory Lugana, so nothing terribly startling about that. I'm just going to have a look. I don't even know what the model was stitched on 28 count new khaki Lugana. So for me that would be too brown, too dark, not a color choice that I would be comfortable with. So, and the thread color, so again, this is not a complicated pattern. It's an over-dyed thread for all of the borders as well as the letters. And so the called for is Caron Wildflowers Fiesta, which is number 010. So that's so it is very fall-y. So that's the over-dyed. Now I am one of those people where I go, well, if I'm going into over-dyed land and I am doing a Caron color, they also do have it in water lilies. So interestingly enough, I did pick up the water lilies. It's much brighter. So, you know, I've had to look at that and sort of go, what is my decision? And I am sticking with the wildflowers because this one I just felt the oranges were a little more bright than I was wanting for this piece. So I am sticking with the wildflowers just to keep that tonally a little darker. The other thing to note when you're getting a Hinzeit, doing a Hinzeit chart. So when you look at this, so it does come with all of the charms that go on this pattern, but just in case you're wondering, the ones that you see on the actual model design are not necessarily the ones that you're going to get in your package. And they do make a note of this on their patterns, that they fill the charm requirements for their patterns based on availability. So just a note to self that if you're buying a Hinzeit chart and you're going because, you know, anywhere from 5 to 12 charms that you see on the model stitch, you think are the best ones, just a note that you need to be aware that when you get your individual pattern, the charm pack that comes with it will likely have some of them that are the same, but could easily have others that are quite a bit different. So just so everybody's aware, I did haul mine out. So here's the charm pack. So the ones that I've got for this particular Hinzeit kit are the same as the ones on the model stitch, but I do know that I have other Hinzeit charts with charms where some of them are the same and some of them are different. So just so you're aware. The other interesting thing is, because I can't help myself, because I am prone to change colors and do things like that, I did contemplate, you know, because I would have been in the store contemplating other options. And so this is the other option that I was looking at for what I could use for a variegated thread to do that particular piece. But with the pinks and purples, I just felt this was going a little more colorful than I probably would think of autumn colors. So after all of that, I have 2 extra threads to put into my stash, and I will continue using surprisingly, the called for fabric. So that's what I've accomplished this week. That's what I've stitched this week. I'm going to move on to haul, and not surprisingly, I've only got a little bit. So some of the threads that I had ordered for some of the other patterns that I was looking at doing did arrive. So Classic Colorworks Blue Moon, Classic Colorworks Carrie Berry, and Classic Colorworks Lemongrass, and Classic Colorworks Pink Posy. So that's all the colors that I need to kit up those last 2 projects that were potentials, which means I'm now in a position that when I go to make my decision for what's my project for weekend number 5, I have all the choice in the world. So all of the patterns that I had identified as being possible options for that weekend have now been kitted up sufficiently that any one of them can be chosen for weekend number 5. So I haven't made a final decision. We'll have to see. I don't know. We'll see what I feel like after. Now that I've got spring, summer, and fall, I have a little bit of a thing saying maybe you should work on something winter, but technically my Monday through Friday project is winter. It's very winter dream. So maybe it will end up being something else. Who knows? Stay tuned. And on that, just a couple of things. I know certainly as a stitching community, we've been doing a really great job of trying to keep all of our local needlework shops and our online needlework shops up and in business. You know, for a variety of reasons, some of us have had more time to stitch than we would have otherwise had. And I know that certainly the commentary from a lot of the shops is we, the stitching community, have been keeping them really busy. from what I know from talking to the owner of my local needlework shop, this is unprecedented times, and for some of them, while they truly appreciate the level of support and all of those online orders. It's a level of online ordering that most of them are unaccustomed to and haven't necessarily seen these volumes, and they're certainly doing their best to fulfill those orders on a timely basis. However, with everything that's going on, you've got a couple of things also impacting things. The shipping certainly is a little slower. Both, they can put it in the mail to you, and it's going to take longer to get to you than it normally would. Shipping from their suppliers to them is taking a little longer than it normally would. There are certain suppliers that are still closed. So the one that I can think of right off the top of my head, Rainbow Gallery, is still closed. They're in California, and as of Sunday, today, they do not have a potential reopening date. So, I myself, I'm missing a Rainbow Gallery for something that I know that I was potentially considering kitting up, but the answer is, my LNS didn't have it in stock, and they absolutely have no way of getting it until Rainbow Gallery reopens, which is unknown. So through no fault of their own, and it's absolutely nobody's fault. So that project sort of got put in the, after we get through this, it can be kitted up and it can be stitched. Gentle Arts has recently reopened, but I can only imagine, what the sheer amount of orders that are going in. I'm sure that they had orders that they were working on before they were closed down, that they will need to catch up on. And again, with all of the orders that have been coming in through this situation, as the rest of us have been trying to kit things up and get working on things, I'm sure that they will be overwhelmed with orders, but let's all be patient and not be too demanding of our LNSs and online needlework shops to try to get us things. I'm quite sure everyone is doing their absolute best, from suppliers to the stores, to get everybody kitted up and ready to go, because we all enjoy our hobby so much. So that's it for me this week. I hope everybody is staying safe. If you've liked this video, please like and subscribe to see more of what I'm working on. And if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments down below. Be more than happy to take your questions and answer them to the best of my ability. So again, I hope everybody is staying safe and finding a lot of enjoyment in their stitching as we go through this unusual situation that we're all living through. So I look forward to seeing you next week, and I hope you get a lot of stitching in. See you next week.